Hey there, folks. Welcome to another edition of Stranger in a Southern Land. I, of course, am your host, Jake Manning. Today on the program, we have George from Copper Barrel Distillery. I was actually supposed to sit down with Buck, the head distiller over there at Copper Barrel, but Buck was off busy making moonshine, and me and George were just standing around having a wonderful conversation, and then finally I said, hey, George, let's put the headphones on, let's get the microphones out, and let's hit record. Let's get this on tape, and the conversation, it was even better on camera as it was off. You know, George has got an interesting story. You know, he retired from IBM, had a wonderful retirement package, and he could be down in Florida doing nothing. But instead, he's in North Wilkesboro making moonshine and got big plans for Copper Barrel Distillery. You know, he's making a product that he's passionate about, and I can get behind that because it's alcohol. But also, too, he's creating something out of nothing. He's making stuff happen. He's not sitting back. He's doing stuff. He's making it happen. And those are the type of individuals I want here on this program, Stranger in a Southern Land. But another thing that we do here on the program is I let you know where I'm going to be at this weekend. And this weekend, Friday, May 8th, I will be returning to Oakwood, Virginia in Twin Valley Middle School, and that'll be for Big Time Wrestling. Big Time has been giving me a lot of dates recently, so I thank them for that. And as a reminder, I'll let you know I'll be there. Big Time Wrestling, Oakwood, Virginia, Friday, May 8th. Then Saturday, May 9th, I will be at Symphony Park for the Beer, Bourbon, and Barbecue Festival. I won't be making an appearance. I won't be wrestling there. All I'll be doing is just walking around making sure the quality of bourbon is fantastic and the quality of the beer is fantastic and the quality of the barbecue is fantastic. I will just be walking around, and if you recognize me from this program or professional wrestling or anything else, come up and say, hey, I'll have a free Stranger in a Southern Land sticker to give you. So if you recognize me at Symphony Park this Saturday, just walking around, drinking bourbon, some beer, and eating some barbecue, just come up and say, hey, I got a free sticker for you. So anyways, if you also want to meet me on social media, I am available on Twitter at ManScoutManning, and also breaking news, I'm on Instagram now, also at ManScoutManning. And of course, if you want to email me for anything related to the podcast, make sure you email me at jake@sslshow.com. And if you have any inquiries about wrestling bookings or anything like that, if you want to book me for a wrestling show, make sure you email me at manscoutmanning@yahoo.com. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into this wonderful interview with George from Copper Barrel Distillery here on Stranger in a Southern Land. About your business and why you want to do it. I really dig the story of what you talk about. You worked for IBM, and now you're in this crazy business of moonshine in North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll go back to the beginning, and you know, like I said earlier, I grew up with my grandparents having a dairy farm, and used to just really truly enjoy going over there and helping out on the farm. And during hay season, there was one year I had moved away and lived about 30 miles away from the farm, and I was 12. But I actually got on my bicycle and rode all the way out to the farm, helped them with the haying season for 2 weeks, then rode back home. And then when I moved to Charlotte about 20 years ago, got a job at IBM, and through that had really enjoyed traveling around and working with people, and always had that draw in the back of my mind that I wanted to go back and work with people in the country. And so fast forward about 3 or 4 years ago, I got involved with the Charlotte Bourbon Club.
Okay.
And the Charlotte Bourbon Club is, for all practical purposes, it's more of a social club, a bunch of people that are really into whiskeys and bourbons that get together twice a month. Typically, it's the second Wednesday and fourth Saturday of every month. However, when I first got involved, the gentleman that started the club kind of vanished. He disappeared. Nobody could get in touch with him. And as the club was getting ready to be disbanded, I stepped in and took over the leadership of the club and started coordinating all the events. And through that, I got to meet several people in the industry, distillers, and the most amazing experience was when Bill Samuels Jr. who was the CEO of Maker's Mark for 30-something years.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Charlotte and signing autographs and helping to promote the product. I introduced myself to him and told him about what I was doing with the Bourbon Club and how we appreciated working with them on some of the special events that we did, where we would do like a bourbon dinner where we'd pair different cocktails made with Maker's Mark and things. And after chatting with him for a while, I said, Bill, I've actually been toying around with the idea of opening my own distillery. And he said, are you serious? And I said, actually, yeah, I really am. And he said, well, I tell you what, I'll give you my phone number and you give me a call after you've talked to a couple of friends, and I'll set up meetings with all the people in the industry you really need to know if you're going to actually do this.
Wow, that's very gracious of a guy that's like, the head of a company of Maker's Mark, which is just a tremendous brand in the world of bourbon. For him to take that time for somebody that's just like, I just want to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, it kind of caught me off guard, and I thought he was just being polite and everything. So I actually didn't get back to him for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And after a few weeks, and I had talked to one of my friends, Sean, told him about it, and I said, well, what the heck? I'll give Bill a call. It can't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I called Bill, and sure enough, he said, yeah, come on up. What date works out for you? And so a couple of my friends and I, we flew up to Kentucky. And
up there, is it Laredo? Did you actually go to the
Loretto? Yeah, Loretto.
Yeah, I've been there before. I've been on the tours, so
and
I'm very familiar with it.
We actually stayed in Lexington, but he set up meetings with the president of the Kentucky Distillers Association. Then we went to Independent Stave Corporation, when the guy that actually owns it, Brad,
Mm-hmm.
who lives out in, I think it's Michigan. It might be Missouri. I can't remember now, unfortunately. Anyways, he actually flew in that morning to meet with us, gave us a behind-the-scenes tour of how they actually make all the barrels, and
Mm-hmm.
explained the difference in tooling and their processes, and just an amazing experience. So there, we went to Vendome, the guy that actually owns and manages Vendome. He himself, even though he's essentially retired, he came in and personally gave us a tour of the facility.
Oh, wow.
And just one after another. Bill Samuels actually came out, I guess it was the second day we were there, and he personally picked us up, and he was the one that drove us around to all these places, and just an experience I could never have imagined or paid for.
That's insane.
It was truly inspirational. And I mean, he's really been a big motivation for me to really do something with this. I couldn't have paid for that kind of a trip and meeting all those people.
For getting that type of knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. And the background behind it, too. When you spend so much time with a person like that, you get to learn a lot about them personally and their history and what type of character he is. And just that, I'm truly inspired to be that type of person, and also reach out to other people in the same way that he did for me. I know that there are other people that are looking to get involved in the distillery business, and I'm more than happy to do whatever I can to help them get started too, just like Bill did for me. Where we go next? So after I got back from the trip, I told my friend Sean and Dan and Jeff at the time, guys, with what we just learned, we gotta at least try. So I started putting together the business plan and doing more and more research about what it would really take to put together a distillery.
Because there's a lot of hurdles to get over, especially in North Carolina.
Yeah, there's the federal regulations, the state regulations, the permitting process, and coming into this blind, essentially, I had no idea how complicated it could be just to figure out what type of still you need and what all goes into actually putting together a distillation system where you have multiple stages, and it's really it's chemistry at the core, and trying to take and figure out what type of ingredients you really want to produce the type of flavor that you're looking for. again, I was somewhat naive when I decided to pursue the business and started to spend a lot of time studying and researching, and then eventually going to some classes. That was another thing that I didn't even really know existed at Kentucky, with the Moonshine University, they call it up there. And
Moonshine University.
Yep.
I'd love to see what their mascot is.
The funny thing is, I don't know where they came up with the name Moonshine University. However, they teach you all about the science behind distillation. They have several different classes, and it was attending those where I learned of how complicated it really can be to come up with a good product. And again, going back to the equipment, based on some of the research I've done online prior to that, and seeing how people have come up with ways to make it at home, and it's like, oh, it can't be that complicated. Well, yeah, wrong. It's been a real eye-opening experience. However, it was about a year into the planning process that IBM offered me an early separation package after working for them for about 20 years. And when my manager called me and let me know, I was like, great, I'll take the package. And he's like, well, don't you want to think about it? You have 30 days to consider whether or not you want to take the package. And I was like, no, I'm all set. And he's like, well, you might want to talk to an attorney. I'm like, no, I'm good.
So I was looking where the back door was. So thank you for showing it.
Well,
to
yeah,
me.
and what I thought is, this is great, because taking the package will give me some money that I can live on until we get this thing actually off the ground. And I had been spending more and more of my time up until that point working on trying to put everything together for the business. And I had also told my friends and business partners at the time that, in order to get this thing off the ground, I'm going to have to start doing this full time. So everything's lined up perfectly. I couldn't have planned it any better. And it's really been amazing. So at that point in March of last year, there was a conference in New Bern, North Carolina. It's called North Carolina Main Streets. And what they do at this conference is they talk about all these different grants and funds that are available to help new businesses and small towns that are looking to revitalize their historic areas or their downtowns and encourage that growth in the little communities. And I just went there trying to learn about how we can get some funding to help get our business off the ground. However, what ended up happening is I spent most of my time being approached by mayors and town planners and various government people from across the state who were hoping to actually find a brewery or a distillery to set up in their downtown. And one of the first people to approach me was actually the mayor of North Wilkesboro, Robert Johnson. And he's like, oh, George, I hear you're looking to start a distillery. You need to come out and pay us a visit and let us show you around. And then, another mayor and another mayor. And at the end of the day, I had probably a dozen different cities that wanted me to consider setting up our business there. What I ended up doing after that is defining a set of criteria. There was 15 what we considered to be key criteria to compare each city against. So everything from water quality to what they invest in tourism, the local demographics, and then I started to go and actually visit each of these different cities that we wanted to consider. At the end of the day, when I tallied all the results, North Wilkesboro ended up beating out every other place by a single point. The places tied for second place ended up being Asheville and Wilson, North Carolina. And Asheville was the one that I thought was where we're going to actually go to. Obviously with the tourism and being known as Beer City, and just
they've got things kind of set up there.
Yeah, exactly. However, what counterbalanced that and gave North Wilkesboro the advantage is the history here. Knowing that we were going to have to release a product that doesn't require aging, our first plan was to release a moonshine that we were going to develop ourselves. And there's no more deeply rooted history of moonshining than there is here in Wilkes County. So that was a key factor. The water quality, even though we're located in town, the town allowed us to actually drill a well on site. So we're able to get fresh water from the crystalline rock aquifer below us. The support from the local government's been huge. And again, trying to focus on the tourism aspect of the business, we thought North Wilkesboro knows how to handle tourism. They've done it before, and they would love nothing more than to bring that back to the area. So that really ended up, like I said, it was right down to the wire. It was 1 point that North Wilkesboro came out ahead of the other two. And in Asheville, I mean, I love the place. I'd like to go visit for the food and things like that. However, the support from the local government that we get here, there's no way that we would be able to get the turnaround on things in Asheville.
Asheville's got so many breweries and other things going on there that you would just be another one of those things where you would probably get a little bit more of individual attention from North.
Correct. Yeah, and we definitely have, and it's been extremely helpful. So after I tallied the results and contacted the mayor to let him know that we chose North Wilkesboro, he was extremely ecstatic. And then after a few weeks of coming up here and looking at different properties and trying to figure out where in the area we wanted to set up, he asked me one day, he's like, well, George, who's going to do your distilling? And at that time I said, well, it's probably going to be me because I'm the one that's focused on this full time and been able to do the most research. And he's like, well, I got someone I think you need to meet. So I'm like, okay. And he set up a meeting with this guy that lives here in the county, and I went out.
Of course the mayor would know who the best moonshiner is. Of course the mayor would. Of course.
And it was just, I go out to this guy's place, and he looks like a stereotypical moonshiner, and I just was really, really pleased. And we got to chatting, and after he finally got comfortable with who I was and what I was looking for, and the fact that he knew I was more concerned about the quality of the product and the experience than I was about the money. Obviously, we want to make money doing this, but that's not our driving goal. Our goal is to make a really amazing product that is going to be something that the town can really be proud of. And he said, well, George, sit here for me a few minutes and I'll be right back. And sure enough, a little while later, he comes in and sets a jar on the table and says, well, here, give this a taste and tell me what you think. So I took a taste, and I was like, this thinking to myself, this is really, really good. It's the best I think I've ever had. And at that point, I'd probably tried well over 200 different moonshines. Mm-hmm. So I took another taste, and I said to him, so you can repeat this every time? He's like, better than that, I can teach you how to do it. So we had talked about the fact that he was actually going to design and build the equipment and then teach me how to make it. So I just thought that was great. And as the next few months progressed and we got to know each other better, he came into me one day and said, hey, George, if you're interested, I think I'd like to work with you full time. And that's when I was like, absolutely. He's been amazing to work with ever since. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's got a wealth of knowledge and experience that is priceless and makes a tremendous product.
Which makes your product that much more special, is you'd have somebody that's been crafting that for quite some time, because you say it's chemistry, but it's a little bit of art as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just like a great chef. I mean, mm-hmm. That's what I tell people, is he's the wizard, he's our head chef. I mean, you could have took a class, but for you to pull somebody like that's been up in the mountains here making moonshine, like that person, having that, that's amazing. Yeah, it's been a godsend. And one of the keys for us too is we wanted to make a truly authentic moonshine. We weren't looking to,
because it's part of the reason why you picked this city.
Absolutely,
because of the history.
Yep. We know of other companies that sell what they label as a moonshine, where they're actually buying neutral grain spirits in bulk, and then they're flavoring it and bottling it. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to make a truly authentic Wilkes County moonshine, and we believe we've got the best moonshine on the market. Mm-hmm. And could I have done that on my own without Buck? I don't know.
But you definitely have some points in your case. You definitely have Exhibit A and Exhibit B. So
right.
That's for sure.
And he's been phenomenal to work with. Whenever we've run into any situation, for example, he originally designed and built the boiler that we plan to use, using surgical grade stainless, and it was a true work of art. And unfortunately, because of the way the regulations work here in North Carolina, we were forced to take that boiler out and replace it with a commercial boiler. And that's attributed to the fact that, neither he or I knew with boilers that you actually have to submit an engineering drawing to the board of North Carolina, the North Carolina Boiler and Pressure Vessel Bureau. They have to review your engineering designs.
There's an actual board for that?
Yeah, and which, again, we didn't know originally.
I don't think anybody would think that department exists in their local government.
Yeah, it's a part of the Department of Labor, and they have to review the engineering drawings and actually approve it before you fabricate the boiler. And even then, when you're going through the fabrication process, they'll actually send someone on site to monitor the building of the boiler. So they'll make sure that, yes, you're using the right type of welding rods that you said you were going to use, and that the thickness of your materials is as you had it in the drawings. And then at the end of the day, since they were involved in the design and actually observed the construction, they will then approve it and give it a stamp of approval. So yeah, it was a learning experience for us.
Obviously.
And we knew to go through that process, it would take several months, hopefully not a year, but maybe even as long as a year. We didn't have that amount of time to wait. So we went out and bought this commercial boiler, had a company install it for us. However, that changed with that commercial boiler. There's a lot of other things that we hadn't had. Like I showed you earlier, that horizontal recirculation tank for the boiler. Mm-hmm. With the boiler design that Buck made, that's not a necessary component. And it's a much more simple model, much more simple design. And with this one here, we're using a process now that's very similar to what they use for pasteurizing milk and for steaming crabs, because you need clean steam, right, to pasteurize your milk with or to steam your crabs with. So that's what we've ended up with. And we are the first actual distillery to make a steamed base whiskey. So we're working on actually applying for a patent for the process. Oh, wow. And directly injecting the steam into the mash during our distillation process is what elevates the quality and gives it that really smooth quality that makes it so much more palatable than some of your other products.
Yeah, I just had a taste a little bit ago, just a taste, but I definitely taste that cleanness in it, and it makes it very unique to other moonshines that I've tried as well. But you also brought up some stuff with the North Carolina government, just with that issue with the boiler. Was there any other issues that you ran into in piecing this whole distillery together? Because I know they got some funky laws, like you have to have a working still in place for them to okay it, but technically if you had a working still, that makes you a moonshiner. So you almost have to technically break the law to get something approved legally.
Yeah,
I'm some really wonky stuff.
Well, what it is there's some ambiguity there, and also different people interpret things differently. Mm-hmm. For example, because of the explosive growth of the brewery industry, a lot of people think that it's okay to actually do distilling at home as long as it's for personal consumption. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Federal regulations prohibit distillation across the board. The only exception is maybe for educational purposes. And even then, like if you go to a college and they want to teach distillation as a part of one of their chemistry classes or a culinary class, they have to actually get a federal permit to do that.
Because, you can buy home brewing kits and like Kmart.
Well, and in addition to that, you're legally allowed to buy a still and possess it as long as there's no intent to use it. So you can buy it and have it as a display object, but you're not supposed to buy it and use it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's we were actually fortunate that through Bill, again, I got introduced to, example, the people that run the American Distilling Institute and some other national organizations, where I was able to identify this guy, Jim McCoy, and we actually hired him as a consultant to help us with our federal application process, for example, where a lot of craft distillers struggle with getting their federal permits.
How long did it take for you to get your federal?
I'd have to go back and look for sure. The key success for me there was when we submitted our application, it was approved on the first try.
Oh, wow.
I know, talking to other local North Carolina distillers, they've had to go through and resubmit their application 2, 3, one of them actually I think had to do it a 4th time in order to get it approved. And working with Jim McCoy, it really saved us a lot of time and hassle. It was, I know when we submitted it to when we got the approval back, it was less than 60 days.
Oh, wow.
But again, we were very comprehensive in our package, where it's kind of like putting together a thesis. I mean, you got to have all kinds of supporting documentation about your facility and about your water and about the type of products you're going to make. And it's just very comprehensive. And working with Jim was definitely very, very valuable. The state permitting process was a little easier because we'd already gone through
The federal and
yeah.
Similar documents, I'm sure.
Yep. What else? Trying to think of what hurdles we've run into.
Well, I know a big hurdle, especially for distilleries as opposed to breweries, is your inability to sell on site.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the things that actually we took into consideration with regards to actually opening our distillery. Since we were actually planning to set it up a facility for the first time, we had even considered actually setting up in South Carolina, because the regulations there are a little bit more accommodating. And the way the liquor control laws are in South Carolina is a little better. For example, there's a distillery down there that I like to visit called Dark Corner, and they're right down on Main Street in Greenville, South Carolina. And they're able to sell right there and at their facility. Now, even there, the laws are a little quirky. So their gift shop, which they have, is in the front part of their building, and then there's a glass wall with a glass door that separates the gift shop from the actual distillery. And in the distillery is where they're able to sell you the actual liquor. So you have to pick up your gift items in one room and pick up your liquor in the other room.
Yeah.
And but they've made it work, and it's actually a great place to visit. They make some great products as well.
Yeah, I know there's a place called Frugal McDougal just across the border.
Yep.
In Charlotte, and they've got some weird stuff where, like, one side you can buy beer, but there's a glass wall that divides from, like, your liquors, your everything else. But you have to, like, go in 2 different doors and
Yes.
go through 2 different cash registers.
Yeah, and again, it's because the way the regulations work. They're not allowed to sell beer, wine, and spirits all in the same location. So
Yeah.
that's we're very, very optimistic about this bill that's before the House and Senate, which, to all of us that are involved in the North Carolina Distillers Association, see that as a first step in the right direction, which will allow us to sell a single bottle to anybody that comes and does a tour of our facility.
Because it is an impulse buy. When you take a tour, I've taken the Maker's Mark tour, and I've bought the bottle, dipped the bottle.
Exactly.
There's a distillery close from where I grew up. We bought a bottle, and there was another bottle of something else that we wanted, but they didn't have it. And then trying to hunt that bottle down, after a while, I just kind of gave up on it. So it's definitely an impulse buy. It's definitely something that you once you take the tour, you take the taste. Oh, I want to buy this, and I want to buy this right now.
Yeah, the convenience is just for the customer is huge, and that's. For example, here, we're somewhat fortunate in the fact that there is a liquor store less than half a mile down the hill from where we're located, and So we might be able to get some business because of them being so close. However,
but they go there, they might be sold out. It's whatever, because even your distribution's kind of at the mercy of
the ABC
because you got to send it all
to Raleigh.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's another thing that there have been discussions around with regards to the logistics of the distribution. And today, as you mentioned, everything that we make, we have to ship it to the ABC warehouse in Raleigh, and then they distribute it out to the ABC stores across the state. And even that's only if the ABC stores order it from them. They don't do any automatic.
So you still have to go in the stores, and you still have to sell it to them, and they have to then stock it.
Right. So yeah, Buck and I and a couple of others, we're going to end up traveling around the state to meet all the ABC managers and talk to them about our product, and basically work with them to put the product on the shelf. One of the things I was getting at, we're in conversation trying to convince the ABC Commission to also allow us to do direct distribution as opposed to being forced to ship everything to Raleigh and then ship it back. So again, like the ABC store here, that local, we would like the ability to actually take the product when it's prepared and ship it directly to them.
Yeah, especially if it was like a small radius of 90 miles, something that you could handle yourself. Because I know a lot of small distilleries like the fact that everything goes to Raleigh, because you're only shipping one large freight to Raleigh, as opposed to something to Jacksonville, something to Durham, something to Asheville, as opposed to logistically trying to make that all work. They're just worrying about one specific freight order as opposed to individual little freight orders. But there is that sense of like, the guy's just down the road. Why do I have to take this to Raleigh?
There are definitely some advantages, like you just described, with shipping it in bulk to Raleigh and then having them do the majority of the distribution. However, for example, if the ABC store down the road ran out of our blueberry moonshine,
they got to wait for Raleigh.
They have to wait and get it from Raleigh, whereas we would be able to literally in a couple of minutes go and replenish their stock if needed.
And if you're going to go out to these stores anyways, and you're going to make a personal connection with those ABC stores, wouldn't it be nice to say, I'll be back next Tuesday with what you just ordered personally myself?
Yeah, and that's the way it actually works in some other states, and we'll see what happens. I mean, for us, we're confident that it's going to work out either way. It's just trying to make it more convenient for everybody. We don't want to change the taxation. We don't want to change the exchange of monies. It's just literally trying to increase the efficiency and the convenience for the customer.
Yeah, and the ability to make more income and putting more dollars in North Carolina businesses.
Absolutely, and actually that brings up a good point that I failed to mention earlier. So, along with making an authentic moonshine, we, as much as possible, we source everything locally. So like the corn and the rye that goes into our moonshine, it's all bought from local mills and local farmers. With our spent mash, we actually take and have local farmers that come and pick that up and feed it to their livestock. And again, trying to keep the dollars within the community and within North Carolina wherever possible.
Absolutely. As far as about this, any other business things that you came up and you noticed, just even personnel or work? I mean, where are some other obstacles you faced just in getting this all together? I
can tell you one of the biggest challenges for me was over the last year working with a variety of people. One of the big questions was, well, George, how many jobs are you going to be able to create? How many people are you going to employ? And I kept telling them I really don't know. And part of it was just trying to figure out the logistics behind how we're going to actually go about producing and distributing our product. How many people do we really need to staff our gift shop? And we had an original plan about a year ago, which kind of completely went out of the window when Buck offered to actually come on board as a partner, because all of the production equipment, for example, that we had originally budgeted for, myself and my other business partners prior to meeting Buck, we didn't have to actually invest that money in the equipment because Buck actually did that out of his own pocket. And that's what afforded us the ability to build the gift shop and outfit our facility the way we did. Some of the other equipment that we actually could purchase, we wouldn't have been able to. For example, we actually have some very high-end lab equipment that we use to test all of our product with. And you're talking about close to $100,000 worth of lab equipment that most distilleries, or especially craft guys, are not going to be able to buy that type of thing. Another thing that was a little bit more complicated for us is going into this, I was trying to look at it, and maybe it's my business background at IBM. I was looking at it from a bigger picture where we actually established a C corporation, which is a holding company for our 3 LLCs. We have Copper Barrel Distillery, which is our beverage alcohol business, wholesale beverage alcohol business. And then we have Copper Barrel Provisions, which is our retail gift shop, so any events, tours, merchandise, all of that funnels through our provisions company. And then we have Key City Bottling Company. Again, trying to make it easier for other distillers as well to get established and grow. There's a significant investment that goes into buying bottling machines and this lab equipment, and we figure we would be able to actually contract that type of work out to other distillers that maybe can't invest in the equipment themselves. So we're set up in order to, or set up with the ability to actually take in product in bulk from other companies and bottle it for them, label it for them, test it for them with our equipment. So if they want to make sure that they're within compliance with regards to the proofing and the actual elements within their product, we can do that. So
yeah, no, I think that's something that doesn't get talked a lot about with some distilleries, is you can contract that. Like somebody can come in like, hey, I'd like to make a pineapple moonshine or whatever it is, and they can use your equipment as opposed to them going through some of those hurdles and obstacles because they're probably looking for a small batch of something.
Right, and actually that was one of the aspects of our distillery business is we can't do it right now because we're trying to ramp up for actual
product
distribution. However, yeah, we definitely plan on providing private labeled products for people. And we've actually had a couple of restaurants and bars approach us with the idea of making a specific type of whiskey, for example. Okay. And we'll get there. We're just not quite ready to do that
you
yet.
just opened the doors like about a couple weeks ago, so we're just getting off the ground here. But as far as your product line, what do you have right now that's on your product line, like right now, and what it's going to be seen in the very, very near future?
Okay, so the very first product, which is going to be used as the base for all of our moonshines, is our White Lightning. And that's a product that's made with a blend of corn and rye, obviously a little yeast, and then some sugar. The next set of flavors that we're planning to release as soon as we have the appropriate approvals will be our black cherry, red cherry, blueberry, and strawberry. We have probably about 30 other flavors already planned for down the road. Several of them are actually seasonal products, so they'll only be available on a limited basis. And the reason for that goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Wherever possible, we're sourcing all of our ingredients locally. So some of the fruits that we plan to use, they're only available certain times of the year. And one particular fruit is a North Carolina native fruit that's only available in a very limited quantity. And there are some years that those particular fruits don't even get produced. And that's going to be a great hit for us when it is available. That was actually one of my very favorite moonshines that I've ever tasted when I first tried it. But I don't want to let the cat out of the bag on what it is yet. Okay,
I was going to say, I was like, what fruit are we talking about here? But if it's top secret, it's top secret.
It's very unique. However, it's a flavor that people are going to readily identify with and going to find very pleasing. We've done a lot of taste testing with it, and the feedback we've got on it every time has just been extraordinary. So we're excited about bringing that to the market when it's ready, hopefully this fall.
Okay. Well, you started as a bourbon fan and a whiskey fan. Is there any plans to possibly come up with a line for that as well?
Yeah, actually, that's kind of phase 2. So phase 1, we're focusing on our moonshines, and phase 2 will be our aged whiskey products. And we are looking at actually making a bourbon-style whiskey as well as a rye whiskey. Okay. And again, there's some things that we're going to do differently from most of your other bourbon and rye whiskey producers that I think you're really going to make a significant impact on people's perception of what those types of whiskeys can be.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's back up before we talk about phase 2, which I'm very excited to talk about phase 2 because I'm very much a whiskey guy as well. What else in phase 1 is kind of like your plan? Like you're going to focus on the moonshines and just get everything full production. Is there anything else you want to focus on phase 1 of Copper Barrel?
Actually, there are some things, to complement our gift shop where, you've been to several distilleries up in Kentucky and different places where we also want to add some food type products into our line. So, for example, we'll have a moonshine type of barbecue sauce and some other, we'll have drunken pickles or what I call them. So we'll have some.
And they just gave me a little taste of the syrup. Is that top secret as well?
Well, that's not something that we're planning to release immediately. That's just something that I do.
That's something, a little concoction of your own. It's really good. I'd put it on my flapjacks.
Yeah, right. Speaking of flapjacks, one of the things that just kind of was a brilliant idea when just came out of the blue, no pun intended. One day I was looking to have some pancakes at home, and I wanted blueberry pancakes, but I didn't have any except for what was in the bottle of moonshine. So what I did is I scooped some blueberries out of the moonshine, put those in my pancakes. Oh my God, it was so good.
I can only imagine how awesome that was.
Yeah, and so that's what I love about this business. There's so many ways to be creative, and again, being passionate about food and flavors. It's been amazing. I mean, I wake up every day so happy and excited to go to work, and just been really, truly a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's got to be awesome, especially you could have had like IBM, you could have, had a nice retirement package and just kind of chilled, you know what I'm saying? For you to find a second phase in life, that's got to be pretty remarkable.
And actually that's a good point too. I really did love what I did at IBM. I mean, I enjoyed the people, I love technology, I enjoyed traveling, and especially in the more recent years, towards the end of my career at IBM, I was able to reduce the amount of travel, because when you're traveling every week, 50 weeks out of the year, that got to be a little old. But with the advent of technology and companies being more comfortable with people working remotely, I was able to reduce my travel. And so I enjoyed what I did there, and I stayed there longer than I ever expected to stay with any one company. But part of that was because it was comfortable and they paid decently. So like you were saying, just to find something as a second career, and it's just, it's been amazing.
Something you can do passionately, you know, because I always had that feeling you hear about these cops that walk the beat for 20, 30 years, and the second they retire, they die of a heart attack 6 months after that, because they've got nothing pushing them forward. And then you hear about these comedians like, your George Burns and your Joan Rivers that live to be 80, 90 years old, because they always had that feeling, I got another gig, I got to hurry up. So that was the thing that kept them alive.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that. The other aspect of this, which I just remembered, so knowing that we were focusing initially on moonshines, there were two other aspects of the long-term business plan. One is that we want to open a speakeasy, and the speakeasy will be more like a bar. We'll have some food and things there too. However, we're only going to carry craft spirits. So we're not going to carry your big brands, labeled products. We're going to focus solely on craft spirits, and that again will provide people the opportunity to try things that they've never had otherwise had the opportunity to try. And then the third corner of this business is actually the Moonshine and Craft Spirits Museum that we want to establish as well. And with North Wilkesboro and Wilkes County being the moonshine capital of America, what better place to put the museum than here in town?
Yeah, it'd be a great little tie-in for everything you're trying to do right here, especially downtown here. That you could definitely use, nothing against it, but probably the revitalization is probably what it's going through.
I definitely think it would be a real crown for the county and the town in general. So we've been talking to other distillers, and I don't know if you're aware of this. However, after we announced that we were going to set up here in North Wilkesboro, two other families announced that they're opening distilleries in the area too. So Ed Gamble has started Gamble Creek Distillers, and he actually technically is the first one to get a Wilkes County product on the shelves. We're very close behind him, and then the third one is the Call family distillers. And I've had people question me about that. Well, George, aren't you worried that there's going to be 3 distillers in the same area? And my response is absolutely not. If you go to Kentucky, there are some places in Kentucky, they have 6 or 7 distilleries right within a close proximity of each other. And what does it do? It actually makes it more beneficial for the tourists. So
because you have the Bourbon Trail, and there's even the Bourbon Trail passport.
Exactly.
Which I've been trying to fill out for quite some time.
And we're actually working here. The North Carolina Distillers Association has actually established a craft spirits passport. Okay. So that's still being finalized. The booklet, I think, is pretty much done, the design of it. And we're also, I'm working with the other distillers in North Carolina to establish a Moonshine trail. So that should be a lot of fun. Again, kind of modeling it somewhat loosely after the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky. We want to be unique, and part of that is just the history of moonshine in general and craft spirits in North Carolina is different than Kentucky, so we should capitalize on our strengths. And the other thing that's a key piece of history that most people aren't aware of, prior to Prohibition, North Carolina actually had more licensed stills than any other state in the nation, by far. There was, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was over 1,100 licensed stills in North Carolina alone. And the next closest one, I think, was like 600 or something like that. So, yeah, the history here really runs deeper than most people, I think, realize.
Oh, yeah, and like I said, like Moonshine was the reason why NASCAR was basically invented. So it's been and of course NASCAR is a very big deal in North Carolina and South Carolina. So that all came kind of from Moonshine itself.
Right, and that actually is a good tie-in back to Buck and what he brings to the table. In addition to his experience in the moonshine business, he actually was very heavily involved in NASCAR. Most people, well, people that know him know, or people that know that Junior Johnson oftentimes know Buck as well. And Buck was responsible for designing and building several of the winning NASCAR race cars over the years.
Oh, wow.
And actually personally worked with Junior Johnson to build and design some of his cars. And yeah, it's been amazing getting to learn about this guy's history, and I'm excited about the future too.
Well, let's talk about the future. Let's talk about phase 2. Where does Copper Barrel Distillery go from here after they've kind of got a good foothold in the moonshine market?
Yeah, as you may be aware of, the demand for American whiskeys and bourbons and now some of the other products like the rye whiskeys and things is literally just exploding, especially on a global scale. The demand overseas, like in Japan and China, has just gone through the roof. And if you talk to even Jim Beam and some of these other companies, they're just not able to keep up with the demand. That's why I think it was last year, at one point, Maker's Mark announced that they were going to reduce the proof of their bourbon by 3% in order to satisfy some of the orders that they had. And I got to give Bill Samuels credit for the fact that he turned that around and corrected the situation in a matter of days. As soon as they started getting feedback from the public that wasn't going to be acceptable, they immediately corrected course and went back to their original formulation. The product that they had already shipped out, they actually brought it all back, reformulated it, rebottled it, and redistributed it. So they handled it perfectly. But along with that, the growth and demand for American whiskeys is just continuing to explode. So we want to get into that business as well. We believe taking Buck's knowledge and some of the other ideas we have and working together to collaborate on some new styles of bourbon and rye whiskeys, we're going to have a product that's just absolutely incredible. The key there, though, like with most American whiskeys, we're concerned more about the actual product and keeping it consistent than we are getting it to market to make money. So we've had a lot of people ask us, well, how long are you going to age it for, and all this, and our answer is we really don't know yet. We're going to continue to work on refining the aged product and make sure that it really suits the flavor profile that we're shooting for, and we'll release it as soon as it's ready.
And of course, you got to figure out a place to house that and stuff like that. And of course, with the weather and the climate in North Carolina, it should be pretty well, because you have those big gaps between the cold and the warm, which is
right, especially up here in the foothills of the Blue Ridge. It's, again, that was a factor in our decision-making process, where this facility here, which I love what we have today, we're quickly outgrowing it, even though we haven't got on the shelves yet. We all already know that we're going to be short on space in this first building here. Mm-hmm. However, this facility is a complex. So we've got the Antique Mall next door. That's 80,000 feet. And then there's actually a brick building up behind us that has another 40,000 square feet on 3 floors. Mm-hmm. And the first floor is already allocated for us to use initially. And that is a brick building which has windows on both sides of it, so it'd be very easy to turn into a barrel house. So we have access essentially as soon as we need it to a 40,000 square foot barrel house.
Awesome. All right, now what are some other information about your distillery that you want to share and get out to the people out there? Anything we haven't covered? Anything else of note or interest?
Well, a couple of things that some people might find interesting. We had our official grand opening on April 11th, and hired a band out of Charlottesville, Virginia, to come down called Love Cannon, which they took 80s music and turned it into bluegrass. So all your old 80s hits that most people can relate to. It was a fantastic time. Moving forward, we're actually now open, at least for now, we're going to be open from Monday through Saturday from 10 to 7. Mm-hmm. And we'd love for anyone to come out and visit us, take a tour. We'll show you behind the scenes of some of the history about the Key City the Key City Furniture Factory, which is what this location was prior to us taking it over. Mm-hmm. Give you some samples, and love to get your feedback and show you around.
Absolutely. As far as your social medias, websites, Instagram, where can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, again, we were very blessed when we chose the name we did, Copper Barrel, because we're able to use Copper Barrel across all of the social media platforms. So whether it's Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, just look for the ID Copper Barrel, all one word, and you can find us on there. And please follow our journey and see where we go.
Well, George, you have an amazing story, and I'm so glad to have sitting down with you today and just talk. It's just an incredible story from beginning to end. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know you've got a very busy operation here. It's a small business. You're dealing with phone calls and everything going on, and it's a small operation right now. But I've got a good feeling it's going to be a big operation pretty soon.
Yeah,
so. Thank
you, Jake. And I appreciate you taking the time, too, and coming out to learn about us, and look forward to having you come back sometime.
Oh, hopefully. Thank you.
All right.
Cheers.